So number one, it's weird to be a cartoon. I feel all the pain that he's feeling. Number two, that really ends abruptly.
I
have to sort that out. Sorry.
A little bit of a little softer.
We'll work on that transition.
So why are we in it? You should have blank spots that
that's
you.
That's a good point. Every week we should pay. I think that what was that, Isabel? $1 million to do that 30-second ad. Yeah, we'll pay $100,000 to add Adam Farrington and Hodl.
But in FTT, so it was a very
American Hodl 8.
I appreciate that your cartoon had male pattern baldness. I was like, this is very the realism is strong.
That's a depiction. I don't. I have hair up there. I don't know why Izabella decided to have the cartoonists emphasize baldness. It's not a thing. I have a ton of hair.
Anyway, Josh, you were supposed to do a proper intro.
I can do that. That's Izabella. You know her. And today on the show with us, if you've never been here before, this is the Blind Spot. We have Alan Farrington, Mr. Farrington, and American Hodl 8, who's recently come back to Twitter to get his money back from a bet. And we're about to have Brad Mills.
Wow, that was exciting. Well timed.
Brad Mills has joined us, and today, just before we start here, I'd like to read off a little one of our first and only sponsor ever. Today's show is brought to you by the biggest and best crypto exchange that has ever lived. Kevin O'Leary calls it the only exchange he would put his money in, FTX. So if you want to buy shit coins or Bitcoin, FTX, really an excellent exchange. Heading over there, was it FTX.com, and put all of your money into FTX. So
have you actually got your sponsorship money though, or is this just an accounts receivable?
Why wouldn't we get our sponsorship money? It's just it's on a 90-day. We gave them 90 days to pay, like every other advertiser.
You just have to unstake it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, FTX is a now defunct exchange. We are watching it collapse in real time. It's a little bit like 9/11, but for crypto. Is it too soon?
9/11 for crypto. Yeah, most people say it's like Bear Stearns for crypto, but 9/11 for crypto.
It's a little bit harsh.
This
would be a good moment.
You're right. I wouldn't.
It's kind of accurate because there's going to be a lot of government intervention on the heels of it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a good comparison.
It's true.
This would be a good moment to show my really the in memoriam thing that I've just done. I think we should all be quiet.
Go ahead, do it.
It's very sad. Very.
You forgot the Ontario Teachers Fund. Wow, that was really good.
Yeah.
It is Alan Farrington. It's not Adam Farrington. I did know that. I always have known that, but for some reason, as I was doing intros, I got
said
really
Mr.
nervous.
Farrington, which is very.
I said Mr. just to get rid of it. Don't say that, Alan. That's stupid. So yeah. Where are we here? So we've been sitting around for the last few days. A group of us.
We are amid the debris of the 9/11.
Well, this is we are like the response team after a plane crash. We like to go in and take a look at what happened, what caused it. We did this during Mt. Gox. We've done it during every other exchange collapse. So this is a lot of fun for people like me. Although I know real people got hurt, and I sympathize with them. We really care a lot about those people. We want to make sure that they're okay and aren't committing suicide. So, we're going to go in and take a look at it, and we're going to just kind of diagnose where we are today, talk about it, have a lot of laughs. Hodl will cry a lot because he had all of his money in FTX, and that will be the show today, I think. Am I right? Is that right? And we brought Brad Mills has known a lot about the DeFi space, which is like it should be called fake finance. And Alan's written a great article this week, and is a longtime Bitcoiner, and he's written a great article this week on the FTX situation. So I think that we're going to examine that. And Hodl's here because I like him, and you know, why not?
Yeah.
And Isabella's here because I like her. So
that was a really rubbish introduction, Josh, but fine.
You assigned it to me 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, fine. But you're supposed to introduce people with useful tidbits about who they are as well.
I did.
Okay, fine. But anyway, I think we should start with the ultimate. Well, this is going to be the ultimate deconstruction of what's going on, but perhaps we start with a general assessment of where we are in the, you know, collapse story. So one word from everybody, like we did at the start of the Terra Luna. So what is the status of the crypto market right now, Brad?
I'd say we're nearing the end of the contagion that started actually back in January. And, you know, we talk about this sometimes on Clubhouse, like when did the bear market really start in Bitcoin? And I think it was actually like more than a year ago. And it was just that we got propped up. The price had a second run up to the all-time high because of all these scam whales and all these frauds that were happening in the crypto space that were kind of using Bitcoin as an affinity scam. And so we've been in almost a year and a half bear market, but it's like the market's finally figuring out what a lot of us were suspecting all this time, that the crypto markets were built up on these Ponzi scams and frauds. And most of the risk is out, I believe. We probably have a little bit more to go, but you can't really get a bigger player than FTX to blow up as contagion risk in this space.
So you think the contagion was almost out?
Almost out. It's almost out.
Brad's Canadian, if you couldn't tell everybody. And by the way, Izabella, just to say it, if you'd given it to me 10 minutes earlier, or even like 24 hours, the intro would have been just a shit.
That's why I didn't even bother. That's why I didn't bother, right? I know you do no homework, zero homework.
I do homework.
But Alan, in one word, what status are we in? Is the market in? Give us
you want Brad to use one word?
Alan hails from core finance, so he can give us a very sophisticated analysis in one word. What
I won't though. I'm not going to. I reject the question for two reasons. I think maybe more will come to me actually as I'm explaining this. So one is that I'm really glad Brad is here because he actually pays attention to this stuff and knows the ins and outs of what has happened. I, on principle, do not. I just take a very sort of high level, abstract, this is how finance ought to work, make fun of this stuff when it goes wrong attitude and try to be as moralizing as possible. But I don't actually understand it. It's kind of related to the second reason, I guess, which is that occasionally I will understand it deeply, but only once it's gone wrong. Then people draw my attention to it, and then I get stuck in and I figure it out. So it's appropriate that I'm here, I guess. But I can't give you the answers you want.
So basically, in one word, your assessment is no. Okay. Well, try. And Mr. Hodl, what's your one word?
Well, Mr. Hodl's his father.
That's right. It's my fault. I actually can do it in one word, and that word is anti-disestablishmentarianism. And I think that sums up what we're looking at here. Something to do with churches and state power. No, the word is scapegoating. I think what we're looking at right now, after a week of this, is the scapegoating of Sam Bankman-Fried. And granted, he was running a criminally fraudulent enterprise, and there are going to be a number of salacious details that have already come out and will continue to come out over the weeks and months of reporting as they go on. But I think there are a lot of VCs. Alan's article talks about this. Like, there's a whole culture of people around this thing that should have known better, could have known better, should have known sooner, right? And so placing all of the blame on Sam Bankman, while he's definitely liable and seemingly needs to go to prison, I think it's it's a scapegoating of him. There are a lot of people that have a lot of blame. There's a lot of blame to go around.
I mean, I think there's different types of blame though, right? Like you blame SBF for committing fraud. But then I think it's almost more interesting. I don't know, maybe people differ on this, but I think it's more interesting why the fraud wasn't detected. Like that's like the systemic issue, if you like, right? Like, how could this have happened? Not this specifically happened. How could anything like this ever happen?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just like 9/11 where the FBI knew it was going to happen. They just let it happen anyway. Maybe the feds...
no, Brad. No,
I thought we're trying to make this sound like... I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Whoa. I think this is a good time to run through the major conspiracy theories that are going on right now with respect to what's been happening. So let's run through each conspiracy theory and grade them in order of importance. So
one conspiracy theory is that George Bush did it.
Wait! Stop talking at the same time. Hang on. I'm controlling here because Josh is doing a rubbish job moderating.
It's a great job.
So, number one, I'm going to go to each of you, and we're all going to present our favorite conspiracy theory currently doing the rounds. So Brad, what is your favorite conspiracy theory about the whole thing?
Okay, so I've kind of got my own conspiracy theory I'm not hearing many people talk about. I actually think that this is Ken Griffin's fault from Citadel Securities.
Ken Griffin is the head of Citadel, just for those who don't know.
Yeah, the head of Citadel. He initially got pissed off that the crypto degens tried to buy the U.S. Constitution last year with a DAO. They raised like $40 million. Yeah. He got so pissed off that he burnt $50 million of his own money to steal it from the crypto degens. And then he saw that they were coming after his payment for order flow business at Citadel Securities with the Robinhood, because Jump Trading is another huge tier 1 market maker on Wall Street. Got in bed with Sam Bankman-Fried with Solana, Wormhole Bridge, and FTX. FTX tried to move in on Ken's territory with Robinhood and retail trading in the U.S. with FTX US. Ken actually invested in a competing U.S. exchange called IEX, and Jump and FTX were kind of in bed, and he's just like, I'm just going to destroy these guys. They're trying to steal the U.S. Constitution. They're trying to take my payment for order flow business. I'm just going to blow them up. So I think it was all Ken's fault.
How did he do it?
Money. Interesting. So Ken is embroiled
again. Why did he do it? How did he do it?
Ken is embroiled again in the conspiracy theories on the internet.
It's Ken Griffin's fault. That's my conspiracy theory. I'm putting that out right now.
Okay, excellent one. Josh, you're number 2. What is your favorite conspiracy theory going on right?
Oh, I don't know. I'm here for the pornography. I'm just watching it all collapse around me. I'm enjoying hearing about the sexcapades of the group. I'm actually with Alan on this. I tend to be more addicted to the porn. I wait until the best new porn movie is out, and then I watch it. And this is the best one out there right now. Other than that, I could make predictions all day about which exchanges are going to go down, and I'll be right 98.5% of the time, but I won't know why exactly until after they go. So this one, I don't know what the conspiracies are. I'm sure one of them is partly right, and most of them are mostly wrong, but they're going to be whatever it is. This one's the most entertaining of all the collapses I've ever seen. So I don't really have an answer to that. I'm not as steeped. Usually I wait for the reports to come out before I actually dive deep into the conspiracies. I've heard of a few of them, but I don't retain those.
Okay, and Alan, what is your favorite conspiracy theory doing the rounds right now about FTX?
I don't know if it's doing the rounds because I made it up, but I think that this was all Phil Geiger.
Oh shit! Tell me why.
I'm guessing only Hodl knows who that is.
I have a lot of suspicions about that motherfucker. Right, for real. Mm-hmm.
Phil Geiger is a very good friend of mine who I've never met. And when I asked, and I think memed, I don't know, maybe Hodl can say, but where does the yield come from? Right? He responded with something that was so good I put it on a t-shirt. The yield is the friends we made along the way. That has nothing to do with why he did this. That's just a bit of his background. He works for Unchained Capital, and I think this entire exercise has been the greatest free advertisement for their services ever, and probably better than anything they could even have paid for. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's behind it.
But if you do want to,
as I did in a tweet, which I think rattled him, right, that neither I nor anyone else apparently have ever seen him and SBF in the same place.
Oh,
it's true. Unchained Capital, as a note, if you do want to pay for ads, though, we will take your money. Absolutely.
You have a free slot now,
Alan's is that Bitcoin companies caused the collapse of FTX to promote the idea of self-custodying Bitcoin instead of using exchanges. I like it.
It's a good one. So American
Hodl, what I would dub my favorite conspiracy is Kinky Caroline. I really am enjoying all of the weird sexual details that are coming out of the whole thing. It seems that they were all living in a flop house in the Bahamas. And when I say flop house, I mean $40 million penthouse in the Bahamas together. And there were 10 of them, many of them senior FTX management, all living together. There are reports of orgies. There are reports that Sam and Caroline were engaged in, a relationship, monogamous or non-monogamous, polyamorous. I don't know. They seem very open-minded as individuals. We came across the details of Caroline's blog where she seems to identify the exact type of man she's sexually attracted to, which seems to be exactly who Sam was, which is somebody who's in control of world governments. She identified this as very sexually attractive about men, people who have low risk aversion. Now, this is not high risk tolerance. This is low risk aversion. Caroline seemingly can only be turned on by men who pile on the risk to an insane degree. And so, yeah, I've just been really enjoying the details. And I just, if she gets out of this unscathed, I mean, I'm married, but I don't know. Maybe who knows where she'll be after she gets out of federal prison. Maybe
she's a 10 Hodl.
We could talk
10. Gorgeous woman.
Okay. So I think now's the moment to go to Brad for the absolute sort of meticulous details of what happened. So you gave us a hint of how this unfolded, but my main opening question is, does this connect to the drama back in April with Terra?
100%. Yeah, 100%. So back then I was actually kind of identifying FTX as one of the contagion risks for this whole thing to finally fully flush itself out, because the people that were involved in propping up the markets, like what Alan said, I think it was Alan at the beginning of this, said that, like, why haven't we taken a look at, why was it so hard for them to figure, crypto people, I mean, to figure out that this was fraud? But like most Bitcoiners were just pretty much skeptical of it from the beginning. But it's because the entire industry into 2021 bubble was propped up by this really bullshit narrative and bad logic around what we discussed in the last episode, the whole concept of yield farming and tokens that represent some sort of derivative value of somebody using one of these yield farms or one of these liquidity pools or whatever. Well, they kind of like Sequoia, Susquehanna, all the major Andreessen Horowitz, like Silicon Valley, Shillicoin Valley VCs, basically they turned into just coin shillers. They propped this whole thing up, and FTX is not the only person to blame. Like I think it was Hodl said that earlier. They are just the current biggest player that has fallen from the practice that all the crypto VCs, all the crypto funds were all engaged in, and normalizing the idea that you can do this kind of toxic leveraged nonsense and treat it like a tier one, liquid asset, like a US Treasury or something like that. The idea that you can just print billions of dollars of your token, FTT token or BNB token at Binance or CRO at crypto.com. Every one of these crypto exchanges, for the most part, had one of these tokens that they controlled the majority of the supply of. They issued it and they used it as collateral to then go out and start raising on crazy valuations from tier one funds in Silicon Valley, like that's A16Z. So it goes back to that whole thing. Like, these guys used the same logic as FTX, Caroline, Sam Trabucco, and SBF. Like, all of these people were using the same logic at the other crypto exchanges and at the other funds. So they were in bed with like this whole concept of DeFi yield farming. They were propping it up alongside the other players. And specifically, Three Arrows Capital was one of the biggest funds that went down right after Luna because they were directly exposed to Luna. When Mike Novogratz tattooed Luna on his arm and started chilling it to all the high net worth individuals and retired or registered investment advisors, I'm sure he didn't really know how much of an idiot he was. Like, I don't think he knew he was just incompetent. I think it just was greed and the excitement and the irrational exuberance of the bubble that made him think that that stupid model could actually work. Well, it turns out that a bunch of the smartest people in the room were just as dumb as Mike Novogratz and also believed their bullshit and were huffing their own farts. And they really thought this stuff was financial innovation and that it was real value. So they started borrowing against it. They started they were making billions of dollars, let's be honest, based on the top-down force-fed narrative that this is financial innovation that was coming from A16Z, Raoul Paul from Real Vision, all these influencers. So they all normalized it. None of them saw it coming because I guess they're not students of history. They just never heard of maybe MF Global or Bear Stearns or LTCM or any of the times this has happened throughout history in financial innovation when you try to make derivatives and toxic leverage on top of these derivatives and think that that's all going to be fine.
I think it's worth noting too. I don't know if I'm sure you guys would agree because it's true, but I think that the rest of the world thinks that FTX has been here a while and that all of us are surprised by this long time exchange. I never heard of FTX until they bought the Arena name down here in Florida. And I was really confused. I was like, where this exchange just appeared and I never heard of it. That's weird. And I had people telling me that they thought it was a great exchange. I've never heard of it. So this exchange came out of nowhere. SBF came out of nowhere. And I think it's really interesting now to kind of look back and all of us are comparing notes. I'm like, Hodl, I got a secret. I didn't hear about this until
this is so. Can I just say, I'm totally in the same camp. The FT did this lunch with the with Sam Bankman-Fried. Fried is
correct. Yeah,
Fried.
He is fried now. He's fried now.
Bankman Fried. In May, I think it was May 2022, and I was like, what? I'd not heard of him, and you're so right. It was how come?
Well, I talking to Hodl, and I told this to Hodl, and Hodl whispers back. He goes, "Me too."
Yeah, me and Junseth were talking about this. We're both Bitcoin OGs and been around forever, and we were like, "Who the fuck is this? Where the fuck did this come?" We never even heard of this guy.
We never talked about it until he collapsed.
I heard
it was really funny.
I heard about FTT token 3 days before it went totally to zero. You know what I mean?
I heard about it 3 days after it went to zero.
Yeah, this whole thing in Bitcoin was very much like a whisper campaign. All of us were all kind of doubting ourselves. When did this just appear? I guess I just haven't really been up on shit coins enough to know.
Can I make a quick point about Novogratz and Luna that I think it ties together a lot of things we've mentioned so far, but especially this point about Bitcoiners not really being aware of this stuff typically until it implodes, which is kind of what I was getting out with my own introduction, right? That I why? What's the point in learning about it until there's something to talk about and it's hilarious, right? So the thing with Novogratz deciding to back Luna and a bunch of other influencers as well, right, was that Luna tried this really interesting mutation, I guess, if you want to call it that, of their grift, where they said that they were going to back their shitcoin with Bitcoin, right? Which changes absolutely nothing. It makes no sense whatsoever. And the far more intelligent Bitcoiners who were actually aware of it, unfortunately, I can only really remember Adam Back talking about this because, again, I don't really pay attention, but it rung a bell. Adam Back was completely on the case that all it meant was extra volatility. It didn't mean more buying of Bitcoin because it was still going to blow up at some point. So all it means is that the price goes up a lot more in the short term and then inevitably comes down a lot more in the slightly less short term, but it's still, it's 3-4 months or something between when they bought it and when Luna in particular all collapsed. But I find that really interesting because, again, I didn't really know at the time, but looking back on it, it seems like the point of that was to try to convert the Bitcoiners who otherwise just don't give a shit because it's not worth paying attention to.
Right.
In case anyone's wondering, by the way, I have a multi-sig wallet. One of the signatures I keep in the piano, and the other I stuff into the couch.
Well, I think it's worth noting that Bitcoiners
geographically dispersed.
Bitcoiners were not just out to lunch on this issue because they're like clueless idiots, although certainly some are clueless idiots, maybe some of us on this call. But the reason we weren't that interested in it necessarily is because if you're a Bitcoiner who takes custody of your own keys, you are never going to be materially affected by any of these shenanigans in crypto land, other than, you know, them causing contagion in the Bitcoin markets and the value of your, Bitcoin going down. So it's only reflected in the price. You're not going to have to worry about getting rug pulled. Whereas in shitcoin land, rug pulls are constant. You know, it's a feature of doing business in shitcoin land. Like, you have to constantly be worried that somebody's going to knife you in the back and take all of your stuff. It's a den of thieves, basically.
Yeah, I mean, as time goes to infinity, the probability of a rug pull goes to 1.
Right.
So my question then was SBF, is he a useful idiot? Like, maybe, I mean, obviously you've said he's a scapegoat, but
well, the big Isabel, one of the big conspiracy theories is that this was a false flag operation, but there doesn't seem to be any smoking gun of that. It is like, here's the broad strokes of the conspiracy theory. Sam had a meteoric rise. Like, me and Junseth had never heard of him. Nobody in the industry had heard of him 2 years ago, even in crypto land. Like,
and
this guy
rare, and it's worth noting, it's rare that a dude with such large breasts becomes that popular that quickly. So this was suspicious to us.
Except for Bill Gates.
Well, he got the breasts.
He developed the breast later. Yeah.
He took a while, right?
Mm-hmm. No. I mean, so basically, Sam was a virtual unknown. He had this meteoric rise. Suddenly, he was, with every politician, with every important celebrity. He was on billboards all across the country. And the big question is, where did all the money come from? Because he has a story about arbitrage trading, the price of Bitcoin between Japan and America using Korean exchanges. And I think a lot of us that were around for that time, Brad and Junseth, may remember that was a very short-lived moment. And it would have been very hard to make significant amounts of money on that. And, so maybe he made $10 million, $20 million doing that. It doesn't explain how he was able. Maybe. And
so-called kimchi arbitrage.
Yes.
Yeah, the kimchi
we all remember this. We were here when it was happening.
Yeah, I was here.
It was weird, Izabella, because it just wasn't closing. It was like really persistent. So the arbitrageurs, it seemed like it was just really hard to get money into Korea. And somehow this 12-year-old Sam Bankman-Fried was able to figure it out.
Right.
That was always weird to me.
Did he take
Japan, as the people were saying yesterday, but still same thing.
There are a lot of question marks around the meteoric rise of SBF. That's really like where a lot of the conspiracies start, and then they end in the eventual implosion.
Well, they get weirder though, because like Sam Bankman-Fried's parents have strong connections, I think, in the government. Caroline's Caroline's dad was the boss of Gensler at MIT. So this is it's a very weird Epstein-esque kind of plot, minus the children. Well, there she's gone. Bye, Izabella.
That was so offensive.
You got Epstein.
I'm sorry. That dramatic moment. I just pressed the wrong button.
It's like, oh no.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's just going off the rails. I'm out.
I know this about if you mention Epstein, Izabella leaves. I don't know why.
It was the NSA. They hacked me.
Oh yeah.
No, but what I want to know. So SBF previously was at Jane Street, right? And Jane Street was at the time when he was there an incredibly secretive proprietary trading firm. And it was employing all these super big brain MIT types who'd studied physics and mathematics, and they were all focused on ETF arbitrage, essentially.
Everyone I've ever seen at Jane Street Capital is the weirdest looking person I've ever seen. It's really I've seen a few videos by their traders yeah, I'm at Jane Street Capital. I'm like, oh, you're a weird looking dude every fucking time.
So a little known fact is that in 2014, I was invited to give a talk to Jane Street, and I don't really know why, but I went because I was curious, and I got a little tour of the office, and it was fascinating because the founders, who were quite mysterious at the time, there was a poker room, where you could play poker, I remember, or Texas Hold'em, one of those games. There was also almost on every floor there were massive propaganda photos from posters from World War I and World War II, which I thought was weird. And then they took me on a little tour around the founders' offices, and one of them, I don't know which one, had an Enigma machine in there, and it was all like
the whole thing.
Yeah, like an old vintage Enigma machine. So there was definitely, you know, the spirit of that place was very crypto war. You know, I'm just saying, if you're going to go false flag, those guys were into like weird shit.
Where does one get an Enigma machine? eBay?
What? No,
where do you get an Enigma machine?
I don't think you can get one on eBay.
eBay?
I don't know about where you, but it was like, it was the real deal. I recognized it. So anyway, the Jane Street background is fascinating to me, because I think that's where you would, you know, someone would have really cut their teeth doing arbitrage trading anyway. And they were always very secretive about how they closed the arbs. I wonder to what degree it actually involved just getting on a plane with bags of cash, though. What do you think?
Probably a high degree, honestly. There's stories about SBF committing, these are just rumors, him committing bank fraud over in Japan and in Korea, trying to get access to accounts, right? So you certainly had to, step over into some gray areas if you were going to take advantage of that ARB at that time, I think.
So how did, go on.
I kind of, since I've been paying close attention to these markets for since SBF showed up on the scene, I mean, it's true that people were like, who is this guy? Because most of the exchanges or people that start exchanges either were Bitcoin miners or they were in crypto at some point. And I do know some people that had like worked around or met with SBF during his rise, and he was trading and stuff like that. But yeah, there could be some truth to the idea that he was seeded or something with suspect circumstances. Who knows? But there is a trend that happened in late 2019 when this guy showed up on the scene, which was like the only big exchange on crypto for Bitcoin trading was BitMEX. The real big casino was BitMEX. And the founder was pretty well known for counter trading. He was pretty much running a bucket shop, and his liquidation engine was favorable for them. So I mean, it was like pretty whispered about and well known in the trading circles that, like, if you're going to be trading on BitMEX, you got to know that Arthur Hayes is profiting off of you, and just to know that. And then Binance was the other major exchange. And then there was like Deribit, which was allowing 100x leverage and stuff like that, but not available to US customers, didn't have a really great trading engine. So like when they started to build FTX, it actually was a really good technology and sort of in terms of trading. So they did provide something that crypto traders, Bitcoin traders, futures traders actually wanted to go and use, because it was like they had a liquidation engine that was actually preferable. But that ended up causing the problem too in the end, because they allowed you to use all kinds of things as collateral to post as collateral, so that when the markets were volatile, instead of liquidating your whole position, they would like sort of like start taking from different buckets of your collateral and lower your position so that you wouldn't get completely margin called. It was like a more favorable liquidation process for traders, so they could stay in the markets longer. And so they did have some sort of reputation getting built, and it is true that they came out of nowhere and ended up becoming like hobnobbing with like the regulators and former presidents and all that, which is crazy, and hugest celebrities in the world sponsoring the Super Bowl. But it's at the same time what was happening back in 2019, early 2020. You had crypto.com, Celsius, like a bunch of these other super high risk projects that had raised hundreds of millions of dollars in the previous cycle and survived because they sold to cash or waited out in Bitcoin. They started to kind of all do this token thing as well. And crypto.com, I remember, and Celsius both had like huge markups in the price of their tokens, like 20x or something over a matter of months. And that was around when FTT was launching. It was it was like a private sale. They sold their FTT tokens to whoever would, buy in the private sale. Three Arrows Capital actually was offered to go into the private sale, and they said no. Binance actually did invest in FTX at the beginning because Binance wanted to have a stake in their competitor. And Suzu from 3 Hours Capital commented back in 2019 that like this looks like a scam. He's like, who are these guys? This thing looks like a scam. This looks like a shitcoin scam. So it was obvious even to 3 Hours Capital, who ended up doing a lot of fraud themselves and working on it, like trading on FTX, and that there was something up there, but it more so was just the again, going back to the idea that why did the VCs like Andreessen Horowitz and the Coinbase mafia and all the Ethereum maximalists that had whale bags of Ethereum and stable coins after the ICO bubble were still pushing this narrative that like DeFi was the future and it was the innovation that we were all here for. And they were really just pre-mining these bags and trying to look for liquidity on all the markets they could. They couldn't sell it all on Coinbase. Coinbase Ventures invests in all this shit too overseas, and like they get some of the liquidity on Coinbase on the US retail, but a lot of it they have to go out overseas and dump their bags overseas. And that's what FTX and Binance are good for them, because they can, pay the fee to get the DeFi shitcoin token listed, and then they can dump their bags on retail that go on these exchanges. So FTX was promoted a lot by participants in the industry because it was like another exit ramp for them to be able to dump their pre-mined bags of tokens on. It doesn't matter if it's US people or just retail in general.
I think that's a really interesting analysis. And one thing I would say is that on the BitMEX thing, so BitMEX, the interesting thing is that I interviewed Bendello a while ago, and I'm still supposed to write up my piece, and it will be coming, I promise. I just have been on the road a little bit, so I haven't. It was a fascinating interview because one thing he mentioned was that when they came on the scene around 2017, they missed the whole venture capital exuberance. So nobody really wanted to fund them, and they funded themselves pretty much. They couldn't get any backing, and because I think they were in between cycles or something. So when I first heard about FTX and I heard about how easily they got funded, well, I thought that was very interesting because they largely ripped off a lot of stuff from BitMEX. I think a lot of innovation came out of BitMEX, and I'm a little bit more forgiving about the liquidation stuff, because when Bendello explained it to me, it made sense in terms of risk management. Yes, it was harsh and it was hugely bad for the customers, but it was ultimately a risk management tool to ensure that they could provide for large amounts of leverage. So this was them trying to ensure total zero balance. Everything had to square to zero all the time, and he was very clear that this was about ensuring that they don't end up with some sort of terrible capital hole or a situation where they have to bail out customers, right? So that's the kind of offset for why it was such a harsh liquidation agent. So I'm a little bit forgiving of that. But the other interesting parallel is, I'm here from core finance, is how it fits into what happened with exchange development in the conventional space. So I don't know how much you know about the development of, say, the CME and ICE and all the kind of exchange wars and liquidity dark pool stuff that happened in conventional finance, because it mirrors a lot of that. So in the early days, you had two major commodity exchanges. You had the IPE, which was the International Petroleum Exchange out of London, and you had the NYMEX.
How long ago was that?
This was 10, 15 years ago, maybe. And so, well, I oh God, maybe more, because I was there on the last day when IP got shut down when I was just beginning as a reporter 20 years ago. But the interesting thing was that Enron came on the scene, and they were doing all this very innovative stuff, trading derivatives, creating exotic weather shit, not actual weather, but weather derivatives. And they wanted to create their own exchange, their own little platform, and that was one of their next development ideas. And they were going to sponsor and try and get liquidity because they were doing, again, it's like a broker-dealer model where you're trading against your clients. And the banks didn't want that. They wanted to shut down Enron. They were very unhappy with that. So they ended up sponsoring this guy called Jeff Sprecher, who was coming out with his tiny little exchange called Intercontinental Exchange at the time. And they sort of said to him, we'll back you, we'll give our flow to you because we don't want to see anyone succeed. But in return, we get a bit of equity and we'll give you our flow. And of course, out of that came the ICE. And ICE is now the two main exchanges. You've had a lot of consolidation, but you ended up with ICE and CME. And IPE got bought out as well. So this is in the spirit of banks basically dictating who wins on their terms and getting a piece of the action. And then after the big consolidation, you obviously had the rise of dark pools, which was this exactly what you were alluding to, Brad. The banks can only do so much on a lit exchange, and then they want to dump stuff in dark pools where they don't, where the price doesn't move, right? So dark pools started popping up, and that was the equivalent, I think, of what you're saying with respect to FTX and Binance. And of course, the asset managers, you'll remember Michael Lewis's original book, Flash Boys. I'm sure you've read it. This was when everybody started getting very upset with HFTs and all the arbitrageurs. And Jane Street comes out of that.
Izabella, did you know that there's a Michael Lewis angle to this story?
Yes, go on, tell us, Josh.
So apparently Michael Lewis has been embedded with Sam Bankman-Fried for the last few months. And
this was my backup conspiracy.
Yeah, it was. You have one too. I have this one.
Junseth has one.
I'm gonna do it first. So he was embedded with SBF during this whole thing, and so he's been writing a book, I guess, about Sam Bankman-Fried. And Hodl was saying to me earlier that it was supposed to be a book about the beautiful, wonderful, wonderkindness of Sam Bankman-Fried.
According to the email that Creative Artist Agency put out, which is Lewis's agency, he had been embedded, and it sounded like he was very pro SBF because he was like covering SBF versus CZ Binance, who, according to Lewis, referred to them as the Luke Skywalker versus Darth Vader of the crypto industry. And it's like, I think maybe you had it switched backward. Maybe they're both Darth Vader. I don't really know.
Everybody. I think Lewis's attitude to this, right, is that like he spent his entire career just covering and to a large extent satirizing all this, malice in TradFi, and he's like, finally, I found. Well,
he's too dumb to have known that this was a scam. So, although my conspiracy, I wonder if he's the one who sent the balance sheet to CoinDesk.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, right? It could be.
Because that'd make for a great story if you could be there when they collapse.
He was the leaker, yeah.
Right? Will that be like the very last page of his book about it?
And that's why I sent
the epilogue. Like, by the way, it was me.
Well, Hodl said this earlier, and I think
was just to say every Michael Lewis story is always set around a hero, so it would be interesting if the hero becomes the anti-hero. But go on,
or he's the hero.
Yeah, exactly.
I forget what I was going to say. What was I going to say? Where were we?
Oh, we were just talking about Michael Lewis.
Michael Lewis. Blah blah blah. CoinDesk. I forgot.
You were saying about your conspiracy.
I had an interesting response to what Izabella was saying, which is that there's an even more kind of insidious or hysterical, depending on your perspective, I don't know, but angle to the Enron.
Everything about this is funny.
Which is that this is decentralized finance, right? So actually, nobody can stop you building your utterly fraudulent exchange. It's all open protocols. You can do whatever you want.
I think there's a reason that Alex Gibney's film about Enron is titled "The Smartest Guys in the Room," because that's always the core of the grift. It's like, when we didn't know about who SBF was, Junseth, right? But we heard, hey, this guy's the smartest guy in the room. He's figured out some shit you don't even fucking know about. And we were like, damn, he seems to be very rich. I guess he is pretty smart. I don't know.
You know what's funny is I've learned over the years that if I don't know about it or it doesn't make sense to my teeny little puny brain, it's a scam.
Yeah.
Every time, like people will do these things. They'll tell me stories, and then Like it'd be like, I don't understand how the money got from there to there. That doesn't make any sense. And these are just things that people like kind of like accept as reality. Like I don't know.
It's innovation.
Remember last week, Eli Lilly apparently tweeted out this thing with their verified account that they were gonna like charge $0 for diabetes medications, and the whole market went down. Explain it. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
So some person with an account that was like 3 days old tweeted this out, and the bots had already trained themselves on the account, and the whole market tanked because this random like something doesn't work there.
No,
so, like,
my theory on all
like,
that is that it was the causation was the other way around. Like something happened, like this was the moment to get your bad news out, and then reverse engineer it with a stupid tweet and blame it on the tweet and distract from. But that's another story.
But I just feel like all I'm saying is like things don't make sense, and like that's the same with this whole thing. The whole FTX thing, it didn't smell right.
It didn't smell right, but also
watching it.
In terms of the red flags, I really want to talk about the effective altruism side of it. So, and also the fact that he was a vegan, which I think these are both red flags. No, I'm just joking. I'm sure
they are. No, they are red flags.
Sorry if there are any vegans.
No, they are.
How does a vegan have man boobs?
Well, that's how you get man boobs. Yeah, because you know Oreos are vegan. Do you know that Oreos are vegan? You can eat a hell of a bunch of Oreos, and that's totally vegan.
Those are the best cookies.
Most candy is vegan.
Potatoes. Like you eat chips.
I never thought about that.
But anyway, effective altruism, is it a cult? That's my question.
Yes. Emphatically.
It sounds very much like Scientology.
I think Eric Weinstein nailed this perfectly, and this is one of his better framings that I've taken from him, which is that the idealism of an era is usually a cover story for theft. And I think you can see that laid bare here in this case, that the effective altruist movement, especially in Sam's case, was largely a cover story for misdeeds and misbehavior, so that you could tell yourself that you were a good person and project a large shield of virtue to hide behind while you were literally stealing customer deposits, right? I mean,
do you think it's for him personally then, Hodl, that like he's telling the story so he himself explain it away in his own mind, in his own
evolutionary game theory shows that when we delude ourselves, when we lie to ourselves, we become much more effective liars to others. And so it actually behooves you, if you're going to be an effective liar, to believe your own bullshit.
There's that famous psychological experiment where people do horrible things if they think it's for a good cause, right? I think that is correct. So if somebody's just moving back to the conspiracy theory, if somebody says, hey, you're going to do all this crap, but hey, maybe you do a bit of effective altruism, it'll all be good. The ends justify the means.
Right. Oh, yeah. Brad, how long would this grift have gone if the balance sheet hadn't been leaked?
I don't think much longer, honestly. This is why I was calling it out before I knew specifically what the problem was. I just knew that there was a massive problem in the whole industry, and that there was some big players ready to fall. That the foundational principle that you can value a token created from nothing at billions of dollars, collateralize it, and then take loans, that just doesn't make any sense. We've seen it time and time again through every collapse on Wall Street and in traditional financial markets. It all comes back down to a freeze up in trust, a freeze up in liquidity, and usually a toxic over leveraged balance sheet based on derivatives or something.
And then second point, I want to just say, do you know how I know that Sam is new?
No.
If he weren't new, his first move would have been to Bitfinex himself.
Yeah, 100%.
Why didn't he remember when Bitfinex
offer a haircut? Yeah, offer a haircut. They
haircut everybody, but they sold their liabilities to all the users, and they.
Yeah, I was wondering how it is that Bitfinex got away with that, and why FTX wouldn't have done it.
FTX didn't do it because Sam doesn't know that Bitfinex did that. He's new.
Bitfinex actually got hacked though. They got some money stolen from them, like SBF.
Yeah, Sam could have been it was a hack. It was a hack that happened,
Yeah, Sam's new here. He didn't go through the machinations like it was hacked, and then he could have done that. And he could have run the grift a little longer or forever. Like who knows? What if he turned it into a legitimate exchange and then slowly paid back these people? Had the forced hodl for these people. It just would have. It surprised me that he didn't go for the Bitfinex route, because that proved that you could actually do this alternative thing and save your exchange.
Well, I think another thing, like, oh, go ahead, Brad. Go ahead.
Just a comment on like the specific relationships that were happening in crypto, and Bitcoiners are like standing aside from all this, not really like paying attention, watching too closely. It's unfortunate that this does affect Bitcoin and that it's lumps Bitcoin and crypto, because all these grifters like to use Bitcoin as their affinity scam to get people in the door, because Bitcoin's the most like
liquid
brand aware thing that regular people are going to hear about. So like Alex Mashinsky from Celsius would be like, you know, the evil bankers, you know, you can't trust them. Deposit your, you know, get into Bitcoin with Celsius, deposit your money with us. And really it's just, he's running the same grift all these other people are doing by printing illegal securities, like unregistered securities, marking them up, like pumping them, market making the whole thing. And then,
just to put it very simply, we refer to this as an affinity scam in Bitcoin. And the scam is, I like Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin. And so you come through talking about Bitcoin, and then you go, and also I have FTT token for you, right?
So FTX, FTX back in 2020, I was calling them out specifically back in 2020 because they like, okay, so this is the problem with all of crypto. They cannibalize the investor base and the mind share of the investment energy. It's all balkanized into these many different tokens and projects, where in Bitcoin, we are all concentrating our energy towards building on Bitcoin, but not financializing the things that we build. You know, we're doing it in ways that are just using traditional equities or securities laws, you know, like companies are raising and they're issuing equity. Where in crypto, and Ethereum specifically was the thing where this was like enabled, because they created the ERC20 model and the ICO model, and then the liquidity farming model. If you're a fan of a project on Ethereum, if you're a founder of a project on Ethereum or in crypto or in DeFi, you have to also become like a promoter of that shitcoin. You have to like, oh, I love Ethereum, but also you have to also like love my coin for my protocol I built. And then you can also collateralize that if you want and borrow on this lending protocol over here. And then you can get stable coins. And then, you know, also there's a bridge where you can take that to this other blockchain my friend runs. So buy that coin too. And the bridge has a token. So buy the bridge token, because then you save on fees.
And the bridge's token has a token.
If you want to provide liquidity for any of these tokens, we'll give you yield. So put your dollars and your Bitcoin in the liquidity pool, provide liquidity, and then get 20% yield. So before you know it, that's what FTX got themselves into in 2020 playing that game. They launched FTT token as an ICO for the FTX exchange. They launched the Solana blockchain. They're the financiers behind that. They're one of the main parties behind the Solana blockchain. So they had to also do the Solana ICO and promote the Solana coin. They had the Serum DEX, which is the decentralized exchange of Solana. They did a 5-cent seed round for that back in 2020, and they had to get like all these crypto funds involved and promote it on crypto Twitter and get all the traders involved. So before you know it, like in 2020, they had 3 coins that they created from nothing. And then they were also the market makers. So they create the coins, make the market.
Sorry, Brad. Sorry to like, this is me just being slow. So that Solana was a FTX thing. I didn't realize.
Alameda was one of the main backers, along with Multicoin Capital, and, you know, Chamath Palihapitiya was a LP in Multicoin Capital. A bunch of Silicon Valley folks were involved in that as well.
Because the like, going back to the like conspiracy theory, obviously he was a Democrat donor, but apparently one of the partners was a big Republican donor, and Solana obviously was the Melania and NFTs, right? So I don't know. It's very interesting. Apparently, SBF has tweeted since we started this podcast.
Really?
Now we have the entire range of cryptographic signals coming from his account. What the hell does this mean?
Well, clearly it's
like
very unclear what he's trying to say here. I mean, this is any word, any series of words.
I think this is a hash. I think it's we're gonna get the pre-image at some point.
I think it's meth. I don't think it's hash. I think it's more meth.
Meth, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Brad, back to what you were talking about the type of behaviors that were going on. I think, the people that are, in my mind, bear a lot of responsibility for this are the VCs. Because the VC, if you came out with I have a Bitcoin company, I have a crypto company I want to do, I'm, thinking of providing real value to customers. They're like, no, don't do that. Don't provide real value to customers. That's crazy. No, you should slap a token on this puppy, and then we're going to take it for a fucking ride. You know what I'm saying? And the phrase that the VCs were using was short time to liquidity, right? Which means like they get to be first out of the Ponzi scheme, first into the Ponzi scheme, first out of the Ponzi scheme, right? And they bear a tremendous degree of responsibility. And maybe, Alan can talk a little bit to this too.
Oh yeah, no, this is, I don't really have much to add other than verifying it directly. Like, so for I think probably most people on this call know, but for your audience who don't know who I am. So I worked in investment management for a long time, but I recently left to, amongst other things, a couple of related things, but start a Bitcoin VC fund. And part of the reason I wanted to do that is, aside from, I think it's a good idea to do anyway, I think there's a lot of opportunity. But when I was still in a far larger institution and we were looking at some of these Bitcoin companies with me as like the token Bitcoiner leading the charge, right? Literally every single one of them repeated exactly what Hodl just said. And keep in mind, these aren't like kind of agnostic tech companies or even, there's like some cryptography angle and they're getting pressure. They're like literally Bitcoin companies. They're open about what they're doing being Bitcoin related. And then they go to Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia, whoever, it doesn't really matter. And every single time they get pressured to stick a token in it and give these people the allocation. And so part of the reason I'm not saying this to, come across like saintly or anything, like I'm a capitalist, right? But part of the reason that I want to do what I'm now setting out to do is to provide enough Bitcoin native, if you like, venture capital money so that Bitcoin companies don't have to put up with this shit anymore.
I think there's this weird problem globally, but particularly like it seems to manifest in crypto a lot, which is we give credibility to people with money, undue credibility. We seem to think that like money is itself the medal of credibility, if you will. It is the diploma. And I think that a number of us have been here long enough to realize that idiots get rich too sometimes.
Yeah.
Even
I think there's a particular deception with Silicon Valley, though, in that I completely agree with that, but we also fail to distinguish between people who have actually earned that money by providing value and people who have, well, there's probably a bigger spectrum than just this, but in their case, people who are managing money.
But Alan, I'll tell you what, like, I know a lot of people who've earned their money and are millionaires, multi-millionaires who are QAnoners.
Right?
No, like, I'm not saying that makes it fine.
It's just not
even worse, right?
And if you're a QAnoner watching this show, know that we also believe in Q. So don't stop watching.
Well, me and Junseth have been looking for the Frazzle Drip video, and if you have
if you have it, we've agreed that if you have the Frazzle Drip video, we will become QAnoners full on. We promise.
No, I just build on Bill and what Brad was saying earlier, and actually there's a really nice link to Silicon Valley here. So the article that you mentioned that I put out a few days ago in the introduction is kind of making this point of tying all of this.
My intro is great, Izabella.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was speechless. That the reason the Bitcoin affinity scam is particularly grating, right, is that all of this crypto shit is somehow more fiat than fiat itself, right? It's like the exact thing that Bitcoin is supposed to be improving upon, if not ultimately replacing. It's like being marketed, the crypto stuff is being marketed as that, and yet taking what it's an improvement of to this like ridiculous new extreme. And I mean, there's like a bunch of different reasons for this. One of them, actually, I remember Brad talking about very eloquently the last time he was on here, which is that because the people doing it are so financially illiterate, they're actually just rediscovering everything in TradFi, but just dumber, clumsier versions of it. So Alan, that's one big problem.
I think what's important about what we've been uncovering in crypto, and I say crypto, not Bitcoin, for a reason. I think the DeFi stuff proves that TradFi is nothing but a bunch of scams, if not for the regulation. if not for the regulation, right?
And the only reason we discovered that was because DeFi is transparent, so we can see all the things they've rebuilt.
Well, but Brad, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying TradFi is a scam. What I'm saying is the regulation is the only thing that makes TradFi work.
No, there's one more. There's one more, and it's hilarious. And you can compare it to Bitcoin as well, right? TradFi has a central bank. So
yes.
One, DeFi is transparent, so you can see it as it's happening. But two, it can't be bailed out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I went back through. I was just
it's like Beanie Babies with Time Warner. There was no central bank.
To prove Junseth's point, I just went back through reminiscences of a stock operator where he's talking about trading in the early 1900s, and he's like, "Yeah, I went to the bucket shop and I told the man, "Cotty swallop, I'll never pay you, sir." You know, right? And it was like this totally unregulated industry back then. And in the book,
read that book,
right? In the book, he's talking about industry coming or regulation coming in. And, you know, taxes coming in, and all the guys at the bucket shops are like, this is the end of the world, you know, and he's sitting there being like, you guys are a bunch of cheats, basically. Like, you're fucking me over every time I come in here, you know.
100%.
Great book. Very good book.
Yeah.
But also, like, it differentiates. Isn't there a bit in it like he can make loads of money on the bucket shops, but he can't later do it in the real market because, yeah, exactly, because he's not got the same flow info. But so where next? I mean, where is the Contagion now? What are, because there's been talk about crypto.com. I don't even know what crypto.com is. Like, is that an exchange?
It's the
right?
same
They
thing
also
as
sponsor a
FTX.
stadium.
Yeah, it's the same thing as FTX. It's just there's
crypto.com
bigger,
more
though,
like
isn't it?
Celsius. They're more like Celsius.
A lot of Americans are in crypto.com, aren't they?
Any crypto company that just bought their way into stadium's naming rights, yeah, they're going fucking down. Like that's your sign right there.
You know what I also think this is the end of, weirdly, is I think influencer marketing is coming to an end with a lot of this. And the reason I say that is because the way that old advertising worked is there was a bifurcation between the content and the advertisement, right? So you'd be like, oh, I'm watching Mork and Mindy. Look at Robin Williams. He's really funny. And then like afterwards, like, buy our maxi pads for your vaginal period flows. And then you'd be like, well, you don't think like Robin Williams sponsors those maxi pads. He says they're great. You know, like there was a bifurcation between the two.
Right.
You could advertise maxi pads and have absolutely no thoughts about how Robin Williams feels about it. But now what happens is these influencers are making a giant mistake in that they're poor. These are not rich people. You know, they might have, you know, if they're really good, they might have $1 million or $2 million, whatever. Not enough to deal with the fact that when someone paid them a little bit of money, they went on to their channel with millions of followers and said, I fully support you putting all of your money into this crypto exchange. I did it myself. You too should do it. Give them all your money. I love this crypto exchange. Sam Bankman-Fried is my favorite person in the world.
Right.
Like they don't have the money to deal with those lawsuits. So like this is it's the industry's taking advantage of people with influencer marketing. And I can't believe how dumb this generation is, like glomming onto these influencers and listening to them. Yeah. I mean, if I were to listen to influencer marketing, I'd have to believe that like Ben Shapiro has like 37 different kinds of mattresses. You know,
who's your favorite influencer?
Mine?
Yeah, if
Kim Kardashian.
Kim.
She's the best.
Brad, who's your favorite influencer?
Gary V.
Don't know those. Alan?
I don't think I know who any. I mean, other than crypto, but like Twitter.
Say Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah, just say Floyd.
Hodl?
Yeah, all right, yeah. Forgot about
yeah, you know, I'm a huge Grant Cardone guy myself. I just think Grant's right on the ball.
Grant Cardone, the Scientologist?
Oh yeah, he knows his stuff, man, about real estates. He knows all about the real estates. So Isabella was asking, you know, what do we think is next? And basically, like, there was a Twitter thread that was just put out by this guy, Travis Kling, was running this fund, Icky Guy, and they, you know, basically post-mortem, they lost a majority of, LP funds, and there are a bunch of those in the, like, you know, mid 8-figure to low 9-figure range that had a lot of their money locked up on FTX. And those are all going to become unsecured creditors, get pennies on the dollar, like, you know, maybe 5 cents on the dollar for every dollar lost. It's pretty much a total write down. And then, you know, there's going to be this, there's at least probably one more big domino to fall. And we think it's crypto.com potentially, but nobody really knows. So we're just kind of, we have our popcorn out. and we're waiting.
I feel like Brad probably does know. I don't mean to put you on the spot and tell you to predict the future, but I read something.
He's been very good at it.
Right?
He has
before Brad predicts the future.
Before, I think we need to just point out this amazing comment.
Yes, that'd be me.
Yeah.
Or Trump.
Orange man good.
Yeah.
Orange man good.
Real good. Izabella was very explicit about this to me beforehand. I got lost in my own eyes before when we were doing the intro, so I forgot to do it. If you're enjoying this discussion, tweet it out. More importantly, follow or subscribe to the channel. We need 1,000 subscribers so that we can have you pay us to start making comments. That's really our goal, is to start having you pay us in order to read the comments.
Hand math. Not a good idea.
So, I think it was 100. When I was a kid, there was a song called Googleplex that went like that. 10000000000. Anyhow, so if you're watching and you're enjoying it, please subscribe. We'd love it. Tweet it out. We want more people listening. And with that, I'll give you 15 seconds. 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And now Brad can give us his prediction.
Should we get
now that we
crystal
have
ball?
more people?
Well, what was Alan saying?
No, I haven't asked him what I want him to predict yet, but
now Alan can ask Brad to make a prediction.
So I read that Crypto.com is in basically the same position as FTX was with regards to their own bullshit token that doesn't mean anything or do anything, propping up their balance sheet. Is that position
doggy style behind Catherine or Caroline?
So crypto.com, there's a reason I haven't specifically called out crypto.com aside from just in general, all the crypto is bullshit. All the crypto stuff is mostly bullshit, Ponzi-nomics and pyramid scheme level, like marketing crap. And I don't want to say everything's a Ponzi or whatever. I try to be specific with my criticisms, because what we're seeing right now is all the crypto people are saying, we the Bitcoiners are just toxic. They never saw this coming. They're just dancing on the grave of all these failed projects because they call everything a scam. And also, so like in 2017, that was the case for a lot of it. A lot of Bitcoiners were just like vocal Bitcoiners were just calling everything a scam or a Ponzi, just straight up calling it a scam or a Ponzi. And I realized, like, yeah, that is not very helpful when you can be, if you can be on the record for saying specifically why this thing is a fraud or has a Ponzi mechanic or is just overvalued, way overvalued, and maybe it's a shirking the regulatory laws in this way and that way and this way, which will get people in trouble, rather than just saying, oh, this is a fraud and a Ponzi. Then you can kind of point back to that and say, look, I had some credibility here. Why don't you listen to me? Which will disarm their claim that all Bitcoiners didn't know this was going to happen. And they're all just out there saying everything's a scam and a fraud. So I specifically try not to say ETH is a Ponzi, ETH is a scam. Because if you say Ethereum is a Ponzi scam, then people are not going to take you seriously when you say Celsius is committing fraud and it is literally a Ponzi scam with a hole in its balance sheet that's going to cause millions of people to lose their money. So I try to be specific, and I think now I've got a lot of ammo that I can go back to and point to, like where I was specifically calling out the risks for projects like Celsius, Alameda, Luna. I mean, I detailed specifically how Luna was going to collapse in January before most people are even aware the risk was there. And this all does stem back to January. When Luna collapsed, it was the first domino really in the entire unwinding of this risky stuff that was going on since 2020, because it started the bear market. It really started the crypto bear market, because you can't have that kind of level of unwinding cleanly, because it was all synthetic derivatives and everybody was taking too much leverage. Celsius was taking customer money, billions of dollars of customer money, and putting it in Anchor Protocol on the Terra Luna blockchain to mint UST coins, which were fake dollars. So that grew to $18 billion on the back of Three Arrows Capital borrowing unsecured in the unsecured crypto markets, kind of like the LIBOR, but like instead of banks, it's like 12-year-olds and, League of Legends players borrowing billions of dollars. So they're borrowing unsecured, going and taking that money, buying Bitcoin, collateralizing the Bitcoin, wrapping it on another blockchain, earning yield for doing it, and then depositing it into Ponzi scams like Terra Luna. And Celsius was doing this. Mike Novogratz was doing this. the co-founder of Real Vision was doing this. Three Arrows Capital was doing this, and Alameda was doing this. Jump is involved in this as well, in propping these markets up and making these markets. So Crypto.com, to their credit, was not nearly as egregious in the type of degenerate activities they were trying to do with customer funds as Celsius. So, I mean, I was specifically calling Celsius out because I knew that they were taking customer funds and locking it into the staked ETH contract before it was even ready to be locked up. And they ended up losing tens of millions of dollars of funds to by just losing the private key. We talked about this on the last episode, how Celsius did that. Crypto.com didn't do that. Crypto.com wasn't an active player in the DeFi stuff. Crypto.com is doing yield, so they were doing more traditional borrow lend stuff. They weren't actually going and depositing customer money in these risky protocols that end up getting hacked, and then they have to eat the loss and print more tokens and sell more tokens onto the market to make up the hole. So yes, CRO is the token that Crypto.com has, and so is Nexo. Nexo has a coin. The SEC came out in 2018, and they, the very first lending project in crypto was called Salt Lending. And Salt Lending had a token called Salt. They did an ICO that was very popular back in the last cycle. And we all learned the lessons because the SEC came after them and they said, this is an illegal security. You can't do this. And they ordered rescission. So Salt Lending had to give all the money back. But even before that happened, all the investors of the Salt token, they never saw any of the benefits of the growth of the Salt platform. So the shareholders in the company, Salt Lending, did pretty well because Salt actually survived the bear market, and they actually got a lot of profits in the end from their lending activities when they started being more conservative. But the token holders of the Salt token ended up just pretty much going to zero. And then the SEC stepped in and ordered rescission. Crypto.com, Celsius, Nexo, all these lending projects that had their own tokens and did 17, 18 ICOs, they never reconciled like Salt Lending did. So there's still risk overhang there for all of these platforms that did illegal security offerings, that the regulators, now that this is all coming out, are going to really clamp down hard on them. And it's more so the risk of liquidity frees up than it is they're a giant Ponzi scam and they're doing a lot of fraudulent stuff with customer money. So 100%, if anybody is in any of these platforms, take your money off. No question, take your money off. Crypto.com and Nexo and all these other companies, it's just general risk right now. You do not want to be in a company that takes your money and puts it towards lending, because you don't know who's insolvent at this point. And so the one shady thing that Crypto.com did recently, which is extremely shady, that makes me start to question them a little more than I have been in the past, was they fat-fingered a send of $400 million to Gate.io, which is a offshore no KYC exchange that people use to get in and out of crypto with no KYC AML checks. So Crypto.com accidentally sends them $400 million. That's the story they're trying to tell everybody. Oh, oops, it was a fat finger, but we got the money back. Don't worry. Well, it just so happens that 7 days after Crypto.com, fat finger sent $400 million to Gate.io. Gate.io releases a proof of reserve statement showing how well capitalized they are. And the next day they sent the money back to Crypto.com. So clearly it's accounting fraud. I mean, what else is it? It's like you send a bunch of money to somebody who's got a hole in their balance sheet, they'll pay you a little bit for doing that so that they can appear solvent, and then you send them the money back. This kind of crazy shit happens all the time in crypto. So it's like, you can't really trust anybody right now.
Devil's advocate, right? It wasn't fraud because they did have the reserves.
Sure. Maybe.
Just to back Brad's point real quick about withdrawing from exchanges. This week was the largest week over week amount of Bitcoin taken off exchanges ever in Bitcoin's history. It's 100. I
told you, Phil's behind the whole thing.
Yeah, 115,000 Bitcoin were taken off exchanges. So there's an industry-wide bank run going on all crypto exchanges, and you don't want to be the last person stuck inside. So if you can
100%.
withdraw, now is the perfect time to learn about self-custody. You can buy what's called a hardware wallet. You want to buy it direct from the manufacturer. It's pretty easy. There's a lot of guides online from trusted individuals. So, and if you need help, you can reach out to any of us on the chat and we will help you with it directly.
Oh, this is
So there's something
We're
else.
Provide personal service. That's good. You can do mine to begin with. But quickly, just whilst we're on crypto.com, how big is crypto.com? Do we have any idea of like in the hierarchy of exchanges where it comes? Like
They have about $3 billion right now of user funds.
And where are they based?
Somewhere overseas. I don't know.
Because the CEO or whoever the founder, he's a Polish guy, isn't he? Chris. Well, he sounds Polish. Chris Marszalek. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know if he's Polish, but he's not.
Polish.
Like a lot of these companies actually were after the 2017 bubble. They left the U.S. or they made sure to incorporate outside of the U.S. And Crypto.com actually performed a token conversion to try to rid themselves of the stigma of their previous token. They used to be called Monaco. They did an ICO in 2017 and they were called Monaco, and the token was MCO. And then in 2019 they rebranded. They bought crypto.com because they didn't stay in ETH, and they actually took all their ICO money and they converted it to dollars and some to Bitcoin. And then, so some of these companies are actually extremely well capitalized because they kept in Bitcoin, or they sold all their ETH before the bubble crashed last time. And so these were one of the guys that used the ICO money to rebrand as crypto.com, buy that domain, do a token conversion to CRO. And then they actually did hire a market maker to mark up the price of the CRO token from 1 cent in May 2019. It was 1 cent around May 2019 to by the end of 2019 it was about 10 cents. So they marked it up 10x. They've got a massive pre-mined bag of their own coin. They use it, they sell it on the markets like on Binance and FTX, and to partly to fund their operation, like buying stadiums. So part of the meteoric rise of crypto.com was in 2021 they marked that token up to 80 cents. So it went 80x. The value of their pre-mined shitcoin tokens went up 80x, and they used that money to fill any holes where maybe they fat-fingered, maybe they made bad loans, they did huge amounts of marketing. They used that to subsidize the high yield that they give customers as a honeypot to get them to send the crypto into crypto.com. So like part of that, and they actually had this. Basically,
isn't this all akin to like what private companies do when they mark their own equity? Like I find it's kind of analogous, no?
Well, no, it's a lot dumber than that, because your own equity isn't on your balance sheet, and your own equity has governance rights.
Yeah, of course. But like when you pay out employees with your own, your own equity, like equity options or whatever, and you mark it on a completely, opaque valuation.
Yeah, sure, but like presumably your own employees will value your own equity, whereas this is more like, you're functionally insolvent and you're trying to pay
and listen,
your equity.
This is what they were doing. This is what they were doing. That was like nothing like the traditional system. That makes it even insane. It makes it just insane. Like honestly, it just makes it insane. They were encouraging customers to buy their token, and then lock up their token in this time locked contract thing, where depending on how much you bought and locked up, you would get access to buy other shitcoins at discounts. So that would be like the equivalent of like a Apple offering this thing where if you locked up Apple shares, you could buy Microsoft shares at a discount, and thinking that was like somehow
Brad, I don't
legal.
think even calling it a share is helpful, because it's like a gift voucher.
Yeah, I mean there are different rights associated with shares.
I mean, from what I understand from the whole point of this thing,
I don't think there is any parallel in the traditional system. It's just nonsense.
No, I think the point of it is it's just unusual for an exchange, right? Because it gives you a discount on services you would buy from them anyway. You get to buy them at a discount if you.
Well, no, they were actually like, the crazy thing about it was they were 100% breaking securities laws in a blatant way, because they were acting as like a brokerage to sell other illegal securities if you locked up enough illegal securities of theirs. So if you locked up enough of their illegal security, they would broker you other illegal securities at a discount. And it was used as like a Ponzi-nomic lockup mechanism until it basically became like obvious that was totally illegal, and they shut the whole thing down and switched to the yield thing.
Maybe it's like a gift voucher, but for someone else's business. You put them on your balance sheet, and then you're like, "Hey, we're solvent."
You're muted, Junseth.
Oh, you're muted, Josh.
Oh,
there it is.
It's very interesting to me. The Ponzi scheme you thought was like perfectly constructed. Like there was no innovation that could have occurred, but like crypto showed up, and we were able to put these like tools to use and really like innovate on the Ponzi. And I'm really proud of that, first of all. Second, on crypto.com, can you get a crypto.com account if you're not an American? I don't think you can, right?
If you're not an American.
No, you can.
Can you? Okay, so you can. But FTX, you're not. I think you had to. It was an international thing, unless you go to FTX US. No, nobody used.
At the beginning, you could. Like FTX had a lot of Americans using it. Even still, when they collapsed, there were Americans
they weren't supposed to. It's different. It's different if you have to use a VPN, right? I'm saying like you as an American are not like they're generally a lot of these exchanges will ban you if they'll say, oh, you can't because you're an American.
Yeah,
they tried to separate
you trivially get around it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean that's what BitMEX got done for.
It's weird. Yeah. It's weird to me that these organizations like and in the US, first of all, Sam Bankman-Fried is one of the biggest international exchange operators. Mm-hmm. He's in Congress telling them how they should think about regulating crypto for Americans. And then second, that they're advertising to United States citizens with things like the Super Bowl or with stadium deals. It's really
Giselle weird. And Tom Brady.
Bundchen, Tom Brady, two of the most knowledgeable crypto people in America.
What do they call? They call that.
Larry told us not to use FTX. If
he did. The name for this is called surrogate advertising, right? So like you have FTX US, and then you're advertising FTX the brand, but really like you go to FTX US, you find out there's no liquidity, and then you just get on a VPN and you go to FTX International, right? They used to do this in India with alcohol. You weren't allowed to advertise alcohol.
They do this with gambling as well,
right? Like, the alcohol brands would own a water company, and then they would be like, "It's our water, but it's the same brand name," you know.
I just came up with a great conspiracy theory. I should have thought of this earlier, right? Well, I'm not sure this really explains actually what happened with FTX, but it's just juicy anyway, right? This is why Tom Brady came out of retirement. He knew this was going to happen. He got the balance sheet, right?
He was
he didn't even get leaked. He's an investor. He saw the balance sheet.
How much money?
FTX. I need to go back to playing.
But how much money did he have before all this?
We don't know. Well, he was worth about $500,000. Him and Giselle, or $500 million. Him and Giselle.
Didn't they lose? Didn't they have like 600 million invested in FTX?
That's a fake story. There's no way that's true. If it is true, Jesus Christ! I mean, but there's no way that's true.
I don't think it's false.
Junseth, back to the point that you said about Sam taking all these illegal, illicit funds and using them to cozy up to American regulators. One of the conspiracy theories, don't know how well founded this is or not, is that Gary Gensler and Sam had a sort of special relationship through the MIT, feeder over there, right? And that Gary
relationship that like a priest would have with his altar boys or something,
and that Gary Gensler allegedly, I don't know if this is true or not, was trying to bring FTX International onshore and give it safe harbor for the entire exchange, which we now found out is a criminally fraudulent enterprise. I mean, that's crazy if true, like just insane.
I mean, that's the conspiracy I had, and that's why CZ had a motive. I mean, if we go a bit Columbo on this, like CZ had a motive to do that initial tweet, right? Because what theoretically was happening was when like you become the monopoly and then you cozy up to the regulators because you don't mind if the regulations go up once you already have the market share because it just pushes out the competition. So you do a nice moat through the regulations. So that was the conspiracy, and therefore CZ was going to be regulated out and SBF was going to be regulated in, and he had every incentive to expose the situation.
So CZ is coming out of this as well as Tether on top, which is funny because a lot of people in traditional finance, especially, like are super like salty about Bitcoin but specifically Tether, and they think Tether's a big Ponzi scam that's been propping up Bitcoin. And it turns out that it's like Tether's weathering all of this so far really
every year, oldest of the scams.
And they've been doing good treasury management decisions. They've been like eliminating all their corporate bond exposure. They told us they never had any uncollateralized debt to 3 Hours Capital or Celsius before the collapse, and they successfully liquidated the over collateralized position that they had with Celsius, the $1 billion position, and they never took any losses. So like they have a massive treasury right now, 50 billion or something like that of US treasuries, and they're making a lot of yield on that at the moment. And Binance is coming out of this as like they were the dominant exchange before this by a huge factor, by a factor of like 10x over Coinbase and FTX. Binance was massive the whole time, and they never did any of this like stadium naming shit. Like they just kept building and kept growing because they have Lindy effect in terms of the exchanges. When Bitcoiners think of like exchanges, or when just regular people think of crypto exchanges, you kind of think Coinbase. That's where you first go. But like it's really Binance. Binance signups on Binance were 10x signups on Coinbase. The volume is massive. And unfortunately, though, they do have their own printed shitcoin, BNB, which adds a risk, but they never did any of the like lending, the super risky lending stuff. So just like I wasn't concerned with crypto.com before all this, like I was really concerned with Celsius, I wasn't ever really that concerned with Binance, other than like they run a casino and they're like trying to
not to mention, Brad, they also tell you exactly what their shitcoin does, right? Like
they
offer like
it's a buy and burn.
A coupon. It's a coupon.
Yeah,
you get like, it. You get like
we're
trades.
We're literally a crypto security. We're just
but then you get it. You get it, and you get cheaper trades on Binance, right? That's the whole, like you're paying for trades. So like they have like
I feel like this is becoming like an Agatha Christie Murder on the Orient Express, Murder on the Crypto Express sort of thing, because everyone
much more interesting than an Agatha Christie novel.
No, I love Agatha Christie. Okay, maybe
I'm with you. I love my Poirot, you know.
No, but it is really, it's like everyone has, it's like all the different characters, you know who they are, they've all got different motives.
Yeah, there's a lot of motives here to
like who's the victim? The victim is obviously SBF, who done it, you know, who
SBF.
had, you know,
well, it turns out that SBF done it, because like SBF, they had a bad reputation before this, because like there's about 3 or 4 main influential segments of crypto aside from Bitcoiners, because we're just kind of over here eating popcorn, like holding our own keys, watching this thing burn down. But there's the Silicon Valley, Coinbase, Ethereum crowd. They're like the the Andreessen Horowitz and all of those folks that were building and supporting all the Ethereum stuff to compete with Bitcoin. Then there was the FTX, Alameda, 3 Hours Capital, jump trading, got into it, Multicoin Capital. They're like the Solana branch of this universe.
It's like Stanford versus MIT, basically.
And then there's Binance and all the affiliated funds that work with Binance and the Binance Smart Chain. And they all kind of hate each other, but they all work together, and they all own each other's tokens and stuff, and make loans back and forth and liquidate each other in certain ways. Like what Alameda had a really bad reputation in the Ethereum community, because they actually crashed they were the cause of the initial crash of DeFi in 2020, because they took their FTT token and used it as collateral in Ethereum DeFi. They put up $100 million or something worth of their FTT token as collateral in a DeFi protocol, borrowed Uniswap token and Comp token and all these blue chip DeFi coins that the ETH maxis and the Silicon Valley people were like pumping at the time. They borrowed them all, and then they dumped them all in the market and cratered all the prices of all the ETH DeFi coins, because they hadn't had yet launched Solana. So they knew that they were trying to compete with Ethereum, with Solana. They saw that the network effects were growing too fast for them to fairly compete with Ethereum. If they had gotten too far ahead, it would have been hard for them to dump their Solana bags and create Solana. So they cratered the market to give them about 6 months of room to be able to launch Solana. They ended up doing that. Multicoin Capital, Chamath Palihapitiya, all these VCs got obscenely rich off of Serum and Solana and FTT. And then at the same time, you've got Binance launching their own smart chain to compete with both of them. Jump gets involved, and they start building this wormhole bridge. And this wormhole bridge is a way to bridge between blockchains. So wormhole gets hacked for $700 million or so. Jump just bails it out. They've made billions of dollars. These guys are making billions of dollars in 2021, dumping these shitcoins on all the people coming in from the celebrities and influencers, bringing all these tens of millions of people into these fraudulent sort of schemes. Jump Crypto starts to bail out Luna as well. So this is where it kind of gets a little like you're talking about like who done it and who's the victim here, because Jump Crypto was in bed with FTX and Alameda for the Solana FTX side. Binance owned a large percentage of FTX, but they didn't have any participation in the Luna scam. Luna was supported by Mike Novogratz and some VCs that were part of the Ethereum community, but also part of this multi-coin thing. When that blew up, Jump decided, along with Three Arrows Capital, that they were all going to be bailing this out. So in the end, you got like central bank, like these people trying to act like central banks to bail out all these hacks, exploits, and blow-ups, because they've all got multi-billion-dollar pre-mined bags that they can still dump if the market keeps going. So they're making they're making this decision of like, at what point do we pull our capital and do we stop bailing this stuff out? When does it become the economic decision to just exit with the money we've made and not be exposed to the rest of this like thing burning down? And we're at that point right now, because this is what I was identifying back in January. And then again, when it happened with Celsius, I was identifying all these dominoes ready to fall. And at some point they're going to just pull their liquidity. And now it's the final stage of that, because Binance, like you said, obviously Binance did not like the idea that FTX was going to invite regulators to come in and strangle the front end exchanges and DeFi front ends, because that would give FTX the advantage. Jump Crypto actually was part of the Luna thing and wanted to see Luna succeed because they had massive exposure to that, but FTX actually didn't participate. That's like when Bear Stearns, or I think it was Bear Stearns, and during the LTCM collapse, decided not to participate in sort of the bailout of LTCM.
Correct.
They got thrown under the bus when the whole thing fell down. Well, Jump actually realigned with Binance recently, which is not very publicly disclosed or talked about, because FTX decided to back a competing protocol to the wormhole bridge that Jump built on Solana. FTX decided to back Layer 0, which is this like multi-chain agnostic technology to bridge. It's like a directly competitive bridge to Jump. So Jump and Binance could have been very well the ones to start the whole thing. And you can see now, after the collapse happened, Jump actually is forking out FTX's ownership of the Serum protocol, and there's $2 billion worth of tokens that FTX creditors are supposed to get. Jump is just forking that out now. They're just removing it. So it's like they're directly stealing from the people that are in, like the creditors of FTX at this point, because they're like, well, FTX is gone. We're just going to fork their tokens out. So even though these tokens are probably worthless in the end anyways, they're still like acting like mercenaries and just picking the corpse and taking.
Brad, explain what you mean by forking out the FTX stuff.
Well, like they like to say this stuff is all decentralized, but if you control the governance coins that make the votes, you can just put up a community vote to say, should we remove Alameda's token allocation for the Serum coin, distribution? And then if the community votes yes, then they make a governance change. And really, it's like Jump controls the governance of Wormhole. They built it and Serum. So all of this governance stuff is like pretty much LARPing. So it's just like there's a lot of like complicated relationships and animosity in these big, huge tier one funds, and they kind of have vested interest to go and pillage as much as they can from their competitors. And you're seeing it all like come to fruition now that it's a bear market. They're all like cannibalizing each other, where in the bull market everybody was in it together, rah rah rah, let's pump this thing, let's bring in all the celebrities, let's buy all the sports teams. Now it's the bear market, and you're just seeing them like pick each other's corpses and cannibalize each other. It's just insane to see it fall out like this, but it was so totally predictable.
Can I just say, Brad, how impressive it is that you know all of this? Like I get that you do it so that you can be a credible critic, right? And probably also because you find it funny. But can you imagine the stress and the horror of actually needing to understand this because you have some money on the line?
By the way, it's
Brad is 100% the smartest dumb person that I know.
What's funny about Brad is we became friends with Brad during the bear market or during the bull market, and Brad would be telling us all this stuff. He'd be like, you guys don't understand. Like, this is gonna happen, then this is gonna happen. We as Bitcoiners, we're like, who gives a fuck? Well, that's shitcoin stuff,
No,
dude.
let's talk to Flo says.
No,
yeah,
Brad is doing better analysis than most of my colleagues in the journalism space. By the way,
or on the sell side, just to be clear, because they're in this now too.
That's true.
Maybe Brad should like list his own media conglomerate stroke analysis shop. It would be amazing.
Let's do it, guys. Let's do it. I don't know if there's going to be anything left.
Isabella, you should have said that.
I don't know if there's going to be anything left anymore, though, after this. Like, I really do think that this is going to cause severe reaction from the regulators. Like, just like in 2020.
Oh, yeah, that's why I buy the conspiracy theory that he was like, pumped up to then, bring down. Like, the whole thing was a massive honeypot or whatever. But two things I want to mention. First is that his big penthouse in the Bahamas is now up for sale. I just put the link in the private chat. But like, just looking through some of I put his bedroom up as my background. I suggest we, I mean, this is what effective altruism. Not even that big. What?
It's not even that big of a bedroom.
No, but like some of the others effective altruism basically is very interesting these days.
Junseth, you don't need a big bedroom when you sleep in the orgy mosh pit. You just pass out wherever, you know what I mean?
I'm just wondering, I think just imagine the stuff that was going on in that bedroom is all I'm going to say. But
I don't think you want to. I really don't think you want to.
But there are two other aspects. So first, just the proof of reserves thing. So that, just to link it to TradFi again, this is, again, a manifestation of processes that have always been around, because proof of reserves, the banks would do this. It was called like quarter end window dressing, where they would send funds around for their auditing snapshots via repo to look healthier than they really were at the key moment when they needed to prove, viability or health. But then there was the famous Repo 105, where Lehman did even more shenanigans to try and temporarily look stronger than they were. So this is again, it hails from like conventional finance. Of course, if you're round tripping all these funds to cover a deficit in the system, this is also basically how the overnight market for funds works, and usually the central bank will come in to plug that hole if needs be, but that's how our system operates, right? So I find that interesting that it's kind of evolving in the same way. But the other thing I want to reference is just the Bahamas. Like, the role of the Bahamas here is very interesting to me, because SBF obviously started off in Asia, right? And then moved to the Bahamas. Bahamas has been very crypto friendly. It has been wooing a lot of crypto people. It's also done its own sand dollar and all sorts of other, I think, experimental stuff. But it's also, I think this is just worth pointing out, the home of Casino Royale. That's where it was filmed. And there was the iconic scene between Le Chiffre and James Bond. So I think for deep state conspiracies, that's also quite interesting. I just wanted to put it out there. I think at this point, we should ask our dedicated viewers to put in any questions for any of the panel. Do put your questions in, because I think I've got to go in about 15 minutes, but you guys can carry on if you want. But it'd be good to get some feedback from somebody other than the Orange Man, which is obviously. Oh, what have you put in the back? You put.
Oh, this is Sam Bankman-Fried's girlfriend. This is Caroline.
You're so mean. You're so mean.
I didn't draw it. This is a Wojak art.
Yeah, I mean. It is fascinating. I mean, Bahamas was also the scene of the Fire Festival scam. Let's not forget. I mean, I wonder if there's a continuing
Izabella,
theme.
I grant to you that it's mean, but what's meaner, this picture or stealing billions in user funds?
Well,
I'll let you be the judge.
Yeah. It's just mean. It's mean.
Yep.
No, it's not.
Yep.
I'm really not fussed. But any thoughts about the Bahamas? Do you think this is like? Is there will the Bahamas be? Will Gary Gensler come after the Bahamas? I mean, can he? I think it's under a Chinese protectorate at the moment.
He's going to send the troops.
Well, the story about Sam is that, as you would imagine, he greased everybody down there in the Bahamas, right? And so that everybody's been paid off. And so we're going to see what type of justice, Bahamian officials bring him to. And I don't know. I'm not holding out for much, honestly, but we'll see.
I like the Bahamas. I used to go there quite a bit. And then
which one? Did you go to Nassau?
We used to go to Nassau, yeah.
I hate the Bahamas. It's so bad. It's so boring. Ugh.
I'm getting hungry watching. Is that
hungry?
Chipotle.
Yeah, I like how you're doing it perfectly.
What are you eating? That looks yummy.
I have a Chipotle burrito, and then Melinda's ghost pepper. This is the best.
Maybe Melinda could sponsor us. That would be cool.
Very good.
Anyway, so do we have any questions? Otherwise, I'm just going to let you guys riff for another 10 minutes. Come on, guys. Interact.
I'm worried about Robinhood at this point. I think Robinhood is
interesting.
That's actually a very good point.
Yeah, let's talk about Robinhood.
Robinhood was working with Jump, and Jump was just like Multicoin Capital. They were in bed with Alameda and FTX. Multicoin was, Jump was, and Multicoin, the founder of Multicoin, during the night before everything blew up, was retweeting and saying this is all FUD, and basically saying don't panic, and this is all not anything to worry about, while he was withdrawing Multicoin's money from FTX. So it came out in the LP letter the day after the collapse that they managed to get 25% of their funds off of FTX. They withdrew 23% or something like that. So while he was telling people not to panic and it was all FUD, he was pulling out his money, but he didn't get it all out. Thank God. I hope that's obvious that those guys were the one of the biggest frauds in this whole thing, propped up a lot of this garbage. And they deserve to lose their money for sure. But Jump signed a deal with Robinhood last year to be the market maker for users purchasing crypto on Robinhood. So that is something that we should assume that Robinhood's users have lost funds in FTX and with Jump until proven otherwise. One of the things that's just really suspect too is that Jump withdrew $100 million. They were the top withdrawer of funds from FTX the night as it was collapsing. They got the most off, and that is not going to probably be fine with regulators and the bankruptcy proceedings. There's going to be clawbacks for all these, hopefully the political donations, the $2.4 billion that FTX and the 130 different subsidiaries invested across the crypto space of user funds. And yeah, all the bottles of hot sauce that Hodl's been using so far, they're going to be clawed back as well, because rumor has it that he was sponsored by Alameda. But yeah, we should be looking at Robinhood.
Stop telling lies about me. Just because I went to several orgies at their penthouse doesn't mean I was sponsored. I was there as a private citizen on my own reconnaissance.
Fuck you paid Brad. For it yourself.
Brad, what you said is libelous. And it's slanderous, and I'm going to sue you. All right.
Sorry
Sorry
about that. It's just funny too. The other thing that really frustrates me, like Zero Hedge just tweeted a quote from JP Morgan, which is pointing out that, hey, all of this stuff was the failure of centralized entities, not decentralized protocols. And this is the narrative that the shitcoin like community and the crypto VCs are trying to spin it as. They're trying to say like he was a fraud. This was a problem with centralized finance. The solution is DeFi. So let's all get more heavily into DeFi and let's get using all these protocols. And it's just like, it's so infuriating that they're completely ignoring that the DeFi thing never really would have had any traction at all because nobody cared about it until they touched something very.
We haven't touched something very important with regard to this, by the way, which is Bitcoin rehypothecation. The wrap Bitcoin now is coming out as apparently not having any backing on, was it on Solana?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to me that there's this massive problem where apparently the rise in price, the amount of Bitcoin being traded on the markets, the market information that we had is a little inaccurate because there's a lot less Bitcoin on the markets than we thought there were, gentlemen. And Izabella and Hodl.
Yeah, thank you. I identify as gentleman. Thank you. Yeah. So, and also, Brad, attend to your question as well when you've answered whatever he said.
I don't remember what the question. What was?
Oh, real quick, I have a thing about
Bitcoin rehypothecation.
Rehypothecation. So, like the wrap Bitcoin, I was telling people this all through the bull market. People kept saying, you can't just ignore the wrapped Bitcoin that's on Ethereum or Solana. I said, yes, I can. I clearly can. Because first of all, number one, there's no Bitcoin on Ethereum or Solana. Those are just Bitcoin IOUs. Okay. Those are different grades of Bitcoin custody solutions. The Bitcoin never exists on Ethereum. If you want to create an algorithmic custody solution for your Bitcoin and then send Bitcoin there, that's your business. But the Bitcoin has never left the Bitcoin chain. It's not like it migrated and went over to the Solana chain, which is the story that they were kind of spinning. And now we're finding out that it was never more than an IOU in the first place, at least in the case of Solana.
And it never traded at a discount. That's what blew my mind the whole time.
No.
That might be the case.
You guys are a little confused on it. So it was backed at one point, but it was backed by Alameda, and then Alameda gambled all the money away, and now it's not backed. So at one point it was backed.
Listen. The point
and it was not trading at a discount when it was backed, but then,
it was always an IOU though, Brad. It was
it was.
If it was a backed IOU or a not backed IOU, it was always an IOU.
It's the same as eGold. Like eGold didn't fail because it was not backed by gold. It failed because the FBI shut it down, and there was just the centralized risk.
Well, that's a little
counterparty
different.
Failure.
That's a little different here. They spent it.
Yeah, I mean, like
it's more like Congress raiding
about
the Social Security budget is what it is.
I'm talking about wrapped Bitcoin as a concept, not this specific case of Sol BTC.
For me, can we just get to the definition of what exactly constitutes wrapped Bitcoin?
So Isabel, it's real simple. The way that it's pitched to you is that you can export your Bitcoin from your wallet, and it will appear on Ethereum as a wrapped Bitcoin. And the idea is that it's on Ethereum. The Bitcoin is on Ethereum. It's not on Bitcoin anymore. You can trade it on the Ethereum chain as if it were a Bitcoin, right?
One of the bad ideas here baked into this assumption is that you didn't generate a taxable event when you did that, right? Yeah.
So this is the idea. In actuality, so this is one of those ideas where you hear that and you're like, I know how Bitcoin works. That doesn't sound right. That sounds wrong. So it is wrong. Because the part of it that they're missing is that someone has to hold the Bitcoin, or the Bitcoin has to exist somewhere as it's, quote, wrapped, right? So it's actually just a synthetic Bitcoin on Ethereum. And your presumption is that the person who's wrapped it, or the escrow agent, holds any Bitcoin at all, for which they show no proof ever.
Is this not just like a tether type thing for Bitcoin?
Yeah. It's literally
like
tether, but for the Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay, well,
so the biggest Bitcoin wrap Bitcoin is WBTC. It's like 200,000 Bitcoin, and it's the custodian is BitGo, and BitGo is pretty trusted in the industry. Like they've got a decent reputation. Like, you know, they're probably not rehypothecating it, but
probably.
Fuck what Brad said. That's a
big
fucking
risk.
IOU. That's an IOU. You have no Bitcoin. If you have wrap Bitcoin, that's a zero.
Here's the risk.
No Bitcoin.
As the regulators are coming to clamp down on all this bullshit, they're going to come after all these DeFi companies that clearly control all the governance and all the protocols and can change things. And anything where there's like OFAC non-compliance or AML KYC shirking, they're going to come in and just stomp down on it. You saw the Treasury come in the summer and sanction Tornado Cash protocol and arrest the lead developer of Tornado Cash. Well, the criminals didn't just stop mixing their coins and using DeFi. Like they just started using the transparent DeFi protocols like Curve and transporting it into wrapped Bitcoin and then withdrawing it to exchanges. So like the regulators clearly are already taking a stance that they want to tame this market, just like after the oil bubble and the gold bubble and the you know, private monies and banks were creating their own private monies, like the bucket shops in the 1920s.
And the dinosaurs, yeah. All the way back.
Every time something comes up and actually becomes big enough to catch the attention of the regulators, if the industry lobbies it good enough or whatever, they can prevent it from being like stopped, but it ends up being tamed, and there's regulations for a reason. And all these Silicon Valley quant devs and stuff are liking to say that they're all cypherpunks and they're trying to provide freedom. And, you know, we should, you know, Bitcoiners should be on the same side as us because we're all trying to promote freedom and censorship resistance. But really, it's like, no, that's what we're building in Bitcoin. We're building censorship resistant, decentralized finance, peer-to-peer money, and peer-to-peer web with no perverse token incentives and Ponzi schemes attached to it. So like, yeah, no, Bitcoiners are not going to come out of this collapse being like, let's all hold hands, kumbaya, let's go on together. Bitcoiners are going to be like, you guys caused all this problem and we're going
to build back better.
They're still not acknowledging that there was any flaws at all in the yield Ponzi scheme.
No, they're doubling down. It wasn't decentralized enough. That was the problem.
I think it's worth talking about the difference in engineering cultures between Bitcoin and crypto land or shitcoins. Is that Bitcoin has a very adversarial engineering culture, comes out of civil engineering. You know, we take it very seriously. This is something that could be a reserve asset for the entire globe. And so, you know, that's not a project that you can just willy-nilly push code to, right? Whereas the shitcoins have a sort of Silicon Valley move fast and break things mentality. And it worked because all their shit is fucking broken. You know what I
mean? Brad, Christopher Ricketts wants to know if there's any DeFi worth understanding. What say you?
Well, I do think that we're going to start building out some of these decentralized finance protocol type things on Bitcoin in, like I said, in ways that are legitimately like peer-to-peer interesting censorship resistant technology that just doesn't have Ponzi schemes attached to it. Like the idea of Uniswap was a really good idea to be able to have a decentralized exchange that allowed you to do trustless exchange of whatever you wanted. The idea of
two things that we need to fix in Bitcoin though, right? Less miner extracted value and less the securities in question having value for a reason.
Yeah, like the concept of you being able to exchange a stable coin just by holding your own private keys into Bitcoin, or like a native blockchain native asset or whatever. It's an interesting thing to pay attention to. What's not interesting is the way that they built it all up to be like financialized Ponzi schemes and added the yield farming component and honeypotted it with like billions of dollars and dumped it all in retail. That's not interesting. So yes, it's like they are saying this. Some of the things that they're saying kind of appears true. Like they're saying DeFi didn't fail, FTX failed. And yeah, that's true. DeFi didn't fail yet or this time, but there's plenty of examples where due to miner extracted value, like Alan said, like that's a bug in Ethereum. It's not a feature. Like the idea that you should have to like look around when you're using a Bitcoin to see whether or not someone's going to rob you blind or exploit your transaction. Like that's what happens in Ethereum DeFi constantly. And that's why, yeah, there's been tons of failures of DeFi protocols. And it's just disingenuous of them to claim that DeFi is the solution to this problem of CeFi, because there's been so many hacks and exploits in DeFi that's not even funny.
You guys can tell me, in my opinion, the only interesting DeFi projects to look at are in Bitcoin. Things like Lightning Network, those types, even sidechain stuff like Rootstock. I mean, there's some really interesting like DeFi projects that are in Bitcoin, but they're the only ones to me that are in any way interesting because they're the only ones that will have any staying power. And I could foresee that a lot of the stupid stuff that's on these other chains will be ported over. And we'll see at some point a lot of this end up in Bitcoin.
I don't know. I think I agree with Brad that of everything, at least I'm aware of, AMMs are the only worthwhile actual innovation. I mean, it goes back to, so I made this point earlier about Brad making it the last time he was on, that almost everything they've done is just a shittier version of something from TradFi. It doesn't need to be replicated. Yeah. I don't, if Brad has anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's interesting stuff that they've built there. And that's the one thing I think as Bitcoiners, to kind of have more credible voices in this space, as more traditional people are coming into the space, like to acknowledge that there is some interesting things that we can build from traditional finance or from the DeFi stuff that got built out on Ethereum and other blockchains. We can take the useful stuff, which we are doing, like Jack Dorsey's doing that with Spiral's TBD project. Like they're building decentralized exchange, decentralized identity. They're trying to build that in a peer-to-peer way with no token nonsense. Synonym's doing that. That's a company that Tether had funded to do Bitcoin only and non-Bitcoin decentralized identities, webs of trust, peer-to-peer web, like using legitimate peer-to-peer protocols and doing this like peer-to-peer finance rather than calling it DeFi, because we're not going to call it Bitcoin DeFi. Some people are trying to make that stick. But at this point, the term DeFi and the term NFT, unfortunately, is just like toxic waste. Like Bitcoiners do not want to associate their project with the term DeFi. That we're going to call it something else, like peer-to-peer finance or something like that.
I feel really sad about NFT as well, because this is like a borderline cancelable opinion until you make endless clarifications that the idea of an NFT is really cool. Just like what the words literally mean, a non-fungible token.
Agreed. I also agree with that as well.
It's like it has this brand that has subsumed what the word means, and you can't say what there's almost no way to communicate it anymore.
You just have to rebrand. You have to rebrand it. We'll have to rebrand it. But where's Hodl gone? And also, let's get through some questions. So
he went out to buy more hot sauce, I think.
Yeah, he ran out of hot sauce. Terrible situation. What do we think about Skybridge? How much did FTX buy? Has Mooch said how their funds are stored?
Oh yeah, I forgot about the Mooch.
Oh, he's screwed, I bet.
If Scaramucci, I think it's speculated that he lost a lot of money in this, right? Isn't that?
Oh, I bet he lost a lot of money. Yeah.
I think he's appearing. I think he was seen somewhere looking a bit dour. Why has Barry Silbert gone radio silent?
No, GBTC.
No thoughts. Okay.
No, I think that there's so just to talk about that real quick. GBTC. Some people are speculating that not GBTC, but what DCG is in trouble with some of this. So I think Barry Silbert's gone radio silent because he's not part of GBTC anymore, is he? I thought it had been handed off and bought by somebody else.
No, it's still their project.
Is it his? Okay. So sure. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's gone radio silent because he's maybe the liquidate GBTC, and I'll be very fucked.
Is Junseth smoking Caroline's Adderall?
Yes, that's a special kind of.
How big a deal does Adderall play in all this, by the way?
I think it's meth. I don't think it's Adderall.
Well, you notice that they started having Adderall shortages about 8 months ago, and that's when everything started to fall apart.
What is behind these? I wasn't really following this. I stopped my drug of choice. I don't have any. Obviously.
You like the heroin?
I just go straight for the opium, actually. But tell me, what was behind the Adderall shortage? Do we know?
She was ordering too much to the Bahamas.
No. There's apparently a global Adderall or US.
I think it's just more that like I look at it like it was a part of the economic war that's happening globally between China and the West and, you know, other participants or whatever. They're purposefully like trying to drive inflation in each other's economies and things like that for economic gains. So that was just part of it, you know, like China stopped exporting fertilizer on the guise of like zero COVID. And now there's the CHIPS Act and like, there's just all kinds of
supply chain stuff.
Supply chain problems. Yeah.
Question for Hodl, who's not here. Are you currently wearing used socks? We could speculate.
I can confirm. Hodl said that during the bull market, he was wearing a new pair of socks every day, and now he's not. He's back to acting like a pleb.
It's that famous quote from Superman 3, I think, where Richard Pryor. No, who's the villain? Anyway, he says he never wears the same pair of socks every day. Got it. Chipotle's guacamole, no? And chips are the best. David Short says he's Googled it now. FTX bought 30% of Skybridge. Mooch claims he's trying to buy it back. Last news I found is from last year and says Skybridge is using NYDIG.
NYDIG.
Hope that didn't change.
I hope so too.
Question. About 12 hours ago, Binance announced an industry recovery fund to help projects that are in a liquidity crisis but otherwise strong. Now, this to me is shades of the Eurozone crisis when the Troika was famously announcing all sorts of new structures to bail out the Eurozone. Do you remember that, Alan? Were you following?
I think that was before me. I'm very young.
Before okay, so when the Eurozone, which is comparable because the Eurozone, actually the euro is kind of like a cryptocurrency, a shitcoin. I didn't say that.
Izabella supports Brexit, I guess.
No, I'm definitely standing with GBP. I called the bottom on GBP. I was very upset about all the FUD about GBP. Obviously a superior currency. Now, I do think though that there are lots of analogies because the euro was effectively the XRP of its day. It was designed to bridge all the different independent currencies that you had in the euro before the Eurozone became the Eurozone, you know, like the lira, the drachma, the franc, whatever. So they created this synthetic currency and then told a bunch of central bankers to merge all the liabilities, and then they forced the countries to comply with certain compliance, you know, debt ratios, etc. But when the Eurozone started breaking apart, they realized they had to have like a master fund to bail these things out because it was hugely fragmented and nobody wanted to, there wasn't political union. So nobody wanted to, you know, the Germans who were the most solvent didn't want to bail out the periphery, right? So there were all these interesting structures coming up over the weekend and recovery funds and people pitching in to try and create new mechanisms and floating new bonds in the sort of Bitfinex style to plug the hole in the Eurozone. It's all very comparable in my mind, but I am interested in what you think of the new Binance maneuver here, because he's asking for cash from any willing takers who might need it. Sorry, he's offering cash to any hard up exchanges.
But he's probably taking equity, right?
I don't know. I have no idea what the terms and conditions are. Maybe you should apply. Junseth, why don't you apply for one of these opportunities? I don't know what the qualifying.
I'll apply if GBTC goes under.
Yeah, I think you're right, Izabella. It's just more of these wildcat banks trying to act like JP Morgan did back 100 years ago to try to prevent a complete liquidity freeze up. And like there's no good scenario for Binance when like these projects go under and then there's less demand for people to gamble on the shitcoin tokens associated with them. So of course it's in his best interest now that their biggest competitor, who was kind of publicly out there as like, oh well, no, we're rescuing the industry, now that they've been exposed as having been like gambling with client money and completely fraudulent. there is a need in the crypto scene for somebody to come and rescue legit projects, but there's very few legit projects. Most of it is just synthetic, toxic, over leveraged trash. And I mean, I guess, yeah, he's just trying to, it's in his best interest to rescue as many companies as he can. We'll see if he's like going to do that with Bitcoin companies too. I think he may, if Bitcoin companies apply, he may give some funding towards Lightning startups and Bitcoin startups. So it actually makes sense if Bitcoin companies need some liquidity too to try to apply, because CZ's kind of had a bit of a history of having reverence for Bitcoin, at least, where most of the other ones are like flooding Bitcoin.
What's a good hardware wallet?
Oh, there are a lot. Depends, but if you want to do a multi-sig, I think Cold Card should definitely be among the wallets used. I like Jade Wallet, Trezor, Ledger. Trezor and Ledger are probably the easiest to use.
I'm playing with these ones lately. The Sats cards. Have you guys seen these yet?
What's that?
They're great.
What is it?
They're so cool. They're just like little cards with an NFC chip in it and a Bitcoin.
Those are Cold Card, right?
No, this is a Sats card.
But I mean, they're made by Cold Card, right?
CoinKite, yeah, the company makes them.
What, is it endowed in the card?
Yeah, you just tap this to your phone.
Yeah.
And then it pulls up a page on Blockstream's Block Explorer, blockstream.info, and gives you the address and the balance. So you can get the address, and then you can send Bitcoin to this card, and then it takes it from the digital world to the physical world. Like the Bitcoin then is in this card. So I love these things for family members that don't really want to get into the idea of like securing their own seed phrase and things like that. If you want to get small amounts,
aren't you dependent on whoever is hosting it? Like, isn't there some sort of
No, that's the beauty of the way that CoinKite designs their products. Well, actually, you know what? The Open Dime is a physical device that it's like a little USB stick that is provably secure because the Bitcoin key lives on a chip that gets randomly generated. I think they must have designed this the same way, because they're like the leader in Bitcoin hardware devices and security and privacy. So I imagine Rodolfo, the CEO of CoinKite, would have designed this in the same way.
Interesting.
I would just say Trezor, Ledger to start with, and then if you want to get more complicated.
Ledger's terrible. I would not recommend Ledger. The user experience is
We've lost Alan.
Oh no, Alan's
gone. Dropping like flies. He's also had to go. No worries. Bye, Alan. Okay. We've lost. Well, I now know what's happened to Hodl. He's saying goodnight to his kids, which is fair enough. We've got one more question, and I'm going to have to go. So I think we are near the end. We've got this question: how to build a Uniswap on Bitcoin? Issues I see. We would shitcoins for it to what we would need, I suspect, shitcoins for it to work, and we would need a stable token. Stables represent 70% of trading pairs today. How would we do this? Any ideas?
Well,
Tether started on Bitcoin. I just want to point that out to everybody. Tether was a Bitcoin asset built on Mastercoin at the time. So, like, first of all, a stable pair is not something that Bitcoin can't do. In fact, it started here. And the shitcoining, there probably would be a lot of shitcoins if you did that. But honestly, a decentralized exchange with a stable coin would be enough. It'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, I don't think that we need to see, and I don't think it will get built out on Bitcoin like the way you saw it get built out in crypto. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, we're going to have to create a DEX and then also create a whole bunch of toxic garbage shit coins to trade it. I think you're going to see Bitcoin get built, or decentralized exchanges and just peer-to-peer exchange get built out on Bitcoin in a way that lives in the real world, where you trade, if you can get to the point where like the future of money is Bitcoin, and digital, then it also makes sense to digitize other things like stocks and securities. And if you have stocks, I mean, you already have trusted third parties for stocks and securities anyways. There's no need for trustlessness in that world, because you have to rely on the company founders, and you have to rely on the that they're going to pay their dividends and all that stuff. So one of the main things that you'd want to be like trading against would be either fiat pegged stable coins like USDT, or algorithmically pegged stable coins like the equivalent of like MakerDAO has the DAI product on Ethereum. You could do that on Bitcoin natively using covenants, which is like a form of smart contracts that Bitcoin has. That's going to be in the future pretty important. Covenants is being used on the liquid sidechain right now, and that's also where they're building out like digital securities that already exist. There's already digital securities living on Bitcoin that represent things like Bitcoin mining hash rate, or Bitcoin derivatives like yield coming from a miner or something like that, like things that are securities. They're securities for sure, and they're represented by tokens on the Liquid network that has whitelisting capabilities and KYC checks and all that stuff. And they're trading on regulated exchanges like Merge Exchange. I think they're based in the Seychelles, and then they're a regulated exchange, and they trade liquid security tokens. So there's definitely a future for decentralized peer-to-peer finance on Bitcoin. The way that Block and Square and them see it is that like it's integrating Bitcoin into the rest of the trading that's happening in the world, rather than putting everything in a blockchain. So being able to sort of like have a native, somewhat trustless way to say buy things from Craigslist with Bitcoin using reputation, webs of trust, things like that. Not necessarily making it so that you have to trade everything as like a coin, and there has to be this whole market developed around DeFi coins and crypto coins to trade with Bitcoin. You're not going to see it built out like that on Bitcoin. You're going to see it built out like stable coin, fiat money, your own products and services, your own like time. You know what I mean? You're going to see regular.
It could also be
Brad.
It could also be, Brad, that like a lot of this stuff gets built on Lightning. And a lot of it is, semi self-hosted. We'll see. I think the future has got a lot. Like I'm not a big believer in tokenized securitization of most things. I think it's mostly inefficient, but who knows? But I do think that there's the possibility of decentralized markets like BISC being built out a little bit better, and getting thrown on places like Lightning.
Well, on that cheery note, unfortunately, I do have a hard stop now. I think we can. This is food for thought for the next podcast. We're going to be watching what happens with great interest. I mean, I doubt this is the end of it. It's been literally 1 week since SBF's notorious FTX is fine, assets are fine. Who knows what happens in another week?
We always get a tweet like that, by the way, before these things collapse. Your funds are safe.
It's so bad. I mean, it's so 2008. It's hilarious. But on that note, I want to thank Alan Farrington for joining us. American Hodl, right?
8.
Mr. Brad Mills, amazing. Thank you so much for your in-depth account and knowledge. And this orange guy next to me, it's that way. Yeah, sorry, the orange dude. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. But we're gonna have to end it here. I'm gonna I think wrap it up with another look at our ad in memoriam stream, just because I kind of liked it.
But by the way, Isabel, we're 62 away from.
We're 62 away. Go and spread the word, everybody. Spread the word.
Subscribe.
More subscribers, and then we can start monetizing this channel. Maybe, just maybe. So thank you, everybody. Peace out. Whatever. And I'm finishing on the stream. Thank you, Brad.
They're so pretty. I don't know who that is, but he's ugly.
Bahamas. Anyway, on that note, see you all. Take care.
See everybody.
Bye-bye.
The broadcast is